All right, guys, we're live, and it's me and it's Gov and Donnie joined us for the recap show. I think for the first time
This
ever.
would be my second.
Second time?
Yeah, second.
See, I'm getting old. I'm getting old. I can't keep track anymore. All I know is I had a good week, and it feels good to have a good week. But just like when you have bad weeks, like you guys saw the first week, I had a good week, and then I had quote unquote a bad week based on profit. But I like to focus on the other P word, Gov, and I know you do as well. Process. It's process over profit. The goal is to be profitable, but there's different ways to do that. And sometimes you're going to get lucky with your process, but you want to set yourself up so when you are profitable, the process pays off. And it did for me this week. I don't know if it did for you or not. I kind of like that I don't ask you ahead of time and we find out live, because again, it doesn't always mean you built bad or good lineups. It just means that it didn't pan out the way you wanted it to.
I just broke even this week. Basically won back my entry fees. That's all that happened this week.
Mm-hmm.
So it could have been a lot worse, but no. I thought my process was good, but if there's one thing I should have done, it was staying more on that one big game that blew up. I had a lot of pieces of that game because it was one of the top games it was basically the top projected game that didn't have any weather a part of it, the Seattle-Detroit game.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had lots of pieces, Hawkinson with Penny, a lot of Reynolds with Lockett. Like I had plenty of pieces of that game in places, but I never actually stacked that game. And that was probably a process. Like it looked like it was coming in too chalky to me. So I wanted to just grab the pieces from it and play some lower owned stacks. And I should have just, again, I keep forgetting to try to look at the build from the other side. Instead of getting pieces of them and playing lower owned stacks, how do I make a good lineup with the chalky stack? How do I build a golf lineup that's going to be chalky, but is also a really highly projected lineup? And so that would have been my one mistake, was not doing that in one of my multiple lineups.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, I've pulled it up every week, my initial line, but I walk you through the process of what I did. And so I'll do that, and then I'll swing it over to Donnie to get a real life take. So I think this is like where the correlation between even real life and fantasy are so intercorrelated, I guess. And we talk about correlation and process a lot in itself. It was like when you watch games, you just know things are likely or predictable, or and then at the point of lock, it literally locks, and then you unlock the possibility. And that's where you have to either enjoy the game or you enjoy the sweat, or maybe that's when you take your walk and you enjoy putting the calculator down. Like there are plenty of different people and different ways to enjoy DFS, and not everyone that plays DFS is a sports fan, for example. So there are different ways to do it. I'll tell you what I did this week. I'll tell you the good and the bad and be as transparent as possible. So I like to start with why I did everything, and then we'll look at some different lineups and get Donnie's thoughts. So you guys know I'm a Lions fan, so obviously there's some built-in bias there. I'm not going to pretend there isn't. But one of the reasons I like Jared Goff this week is because Jared Goff has been one of the better play action quarterbacks this year, and I knew they were going to rely heavily, or at least I thought they'd rely heavily on the play action, because without DeAndre Swift, I didn't think Jamal Williams had like breakaway speed, and so I thought they'd have to set up the run game a different way. And so since Jared Goff's already good at play action, I just assumed the play action would be more of a part. We knew Jamal Williams was going to be high owned, so I'm like, you know what? Let me eat the chalk on Jamal Williams I'll eat the chalk, but I'll get different playing golf. And then, as we find out every week, you got to be able to react to news. And in this case, we found out DJ Shark was out, right? And at that point, I'm like, do we play the reliable Josh Reynolds? Do we play Cephas? Do we play Khalif? And I just played all of them in different iterations of the lineup. The thing I had in all the lineups were Jamal Williams, Jared Goff, and TJ Hawkinson. I just didn't see a way to get off of that. Now, you talked about it, I think 2 weeks ago. If you get the game right, it was the Dolphins and the Ravens. If you get that game right, you don't got to solve as much stuff. So it's not like I'm a genius. I just happened to pick the right game. And one of the reasons I did it, and it goes under. I haven't heard anyone actually talk about it today or in the review, so I want to mention it. In the Ravens Bills game, there was weather concerns, right? And I'm just like, what game has bad defenses, is in a dome, and has a chance to be good? And the Falcons have kind of been that fun offensive team with a lot of interesting athletic weapons that are undervalued. But I believe they were playing in Cleveland today. Obviously, mentioned the Ravens game with the Buffalo Bills being outside and down. So I'm just like, you know what? Let me play the dome game that's projected to be already chalky in some ways with Williams, like I mentioned. I'll get different playing Cephas and not Reynolds in this particular lineup, and I'll just sprinkle here and there. And I liked Hackett to figure out the offense with Jerry Jeudy. I think the Dolphins, the Denver Broncos are actually pretty good. And just like the Lions, I knew that the Raiders could at least score on offense. Bad defenses, good offenses. And so that's why I went with Adams and Jeudy there. And I'm just a big proponent of teams that have bad secondaries, or what I perceive as bad secondaries, but great D lines. And that's exactly what the Jags are to me, because that means that you're going to get a lot of passing yards from the opposing quarterback, but you're going to get a lot of dropbacks from a lot of sack opportunities. And Jacksonville ended up scoring a touchdown and getting there with 9 points. So, and then what would you say would be the luckiest part of this lineup, Go, to not be biased? Again, as a Lions fan, it could come off that way. So I want to be fair. What was
honestly, like, I look at the lineup, it's definitely a little heavier stacked Lions than I would have thought, considering you don't have like you just decided to full stack Detroit. You don't have a Seattle bring back. Like, I'm honestly surprised to not see Penny or Lockett, or like, I guess the glaring one to me is, why is CeeDee Lamb at 6,700, or why is the 6,700 CeeDee Lamb not the 6,800 DK Metcalf as the bring back?
That was probably the error in the judgment.
Not that CeeDee Lamb didn't have a great game. Metcalf actually had a better game. So, yeah. And he was correlated with the lineup. So, like, that's the one thing to me. Now, if you didn't have the $100 to get to it, I can understand.
I didn't.
But then the other thing would have been, like, at that point, okay, how about the cheap bring back, like a Barkley, or even going to Lockett instead?
Mm-hmm. That's probably where I went wrong. I should have probably had a wide receiver, or at least a penny option. And like, instead of single set, but at that point, I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to be.
See, I love the Adams Jeudy mini stack to get you PMR. That is probably my favorite part of the lineup, is having Adams Jeudy. I might have flipped it so that Adams was in your flex to have all the money in the flex, but that's just me.
Yeah, that's probably just, again, that's probably an error in judgment as well. And honestly, that's the fun part about it, is like, when you can still have success but realize failure, or like we did last week, where it's like, I thought the lineup was better in some ways, it just didn't win. That is a good point. I guess when I thought about this lineup, though, I did think about Seattle, but I thought, what if Detroit gets up on them like they did Washington, the Commanders, and then I'll just have all the scoring opportunity, and nobody is over 6K from the line. So, and I honestly thought Dan Campbell is just a crazy man who drinks like 40 cups of coffee a day. He's gonna want to keep his foot on the gas because he had so many close losses last year, and just like even heartbreakers, I guess this year. So it's like I just didn't see a way that, and with all the injuries, I just didn't see a way that they would rest starters. And so I'm like, you know what? I'll be different. I just won't have any big backs at all. But again, maybe that was a mistake. But
I mean, it's not a horrible mistake because like once you get the full on Detroit stack, that's gonna be pretty different in a lineup. You can then put in the chalkier pieces. So it's like it's fine to have a Barkley, it's fine to have a CeeDee Lamb. Those were chalkier pieces at least. It's like it wasn't a horrible thing.
So Donnie, what's your initial take from that kind of build? I know we built a lineup which I'll review here in a little while last week, but I thought it was a fun exercise given that you're not a DFS guy, but you know a lot about the sport. So like when you look back at a slate like this or a series of games, like what's some of your takeaways?
On your lineup specifically?
Well, just like given that you don't play, but you might help someone, that an outside perspective is always valuable. I always say that in my job. I always say that to people. So, like, what advice would you give to somebody who had a similar lineup or with the pluses and minuses week to week, given that you don't actually have money on the line? Like, what's some of your unbiased, no horse in the race advice or just takeaways from the week in general?
Like we started off the show with, the process is pretty important. Even if your thing didn't work, in my personal pick'ems this week, I did awful, but the process was still there. At the end of the games, especially those 1:00 slates, it could have went from I had 6 wins, it could have been 10 wins. It didn't go the way at the end of those games, and you miss out on it. But I mean, a game like Detroit and Seattle, I know we've talked about it a lot so far. These are not going to happen every week. You're not going to always have two teams scoring 40. So it's not, it's not something to look at and think, I need to find that next game that's going to be like this. You need to go and find a game that you feel comfortable with what you're going to get in production.
Well, I just wanted to pull up this line really quickly too to show that galaxy brain. To show that yes, I did make $66 profit this week, but I made plenty of mistakes along with my successes. But just like I described to you, I had a theory behind that process mistake. It doesn't mean it was right or wrong, but at least I stayed convicted to that theory. And like I mentioned, you go with a cheap quarterback. You don't think there's going to be a lot of scoring on the other end, but you think one team has a lot to prove. They have a lot of cheap options. They don't have a lot of depth because literally 5 or 6 receivers were ruled out. They're going to have to play regardless if it's a 30-point spread or not. So why don't I just play the defense with all the other options? Now, this lineup had Josh Reynolds in it. The other one did not. That was the reason this one cashed, and I could eat the Kyle Pitts mistake. But then again, was it a mistake, or did I just get unlucky that they haven't looked his way? If it's a situation like in this game with Wilson where Mike Tomlin was like, I've seen enough of Mitchell Trubisky, and went to Kenny Pickett. If we had seen that in the Atlanta game, which is now rumored, by the way, that we might see Ritter and not Mariota, it's like, whose fault is it the Falcons have had their struggles or Pittsburgh's had their struggles? we can't say, we're just fans, but we can react to news. So I didn't want that much exposure to Jared Goff just in case I was wrong. Went with another cheap option who I thought had similar upside. And you know, I got there late. Jared got there early. That's just two different variations of the same idea. Now, I still think Hawkinson and Pitts were the same play. Honestly, I do. Hawkinson just, you know, opportunity led to Hawkinson getting what he got, but the target distribution was still going to be very concentrated, in my opinion, and it was. The Falcons sort of London, Pitts, they just don't throw very much. The Lions had to throw a lot because Geno Smith played out of his mind. So I guess that would be the difference in the lineups. Donnie, why don't you give me a random number between 1 and 400?
276.
Yeah, I'll pull that up now. Any other takeaways you want to have?
I just wanted to add on to that thing about Ritter possibly playing next week. I think it's very interesting to look at because Cordell Patterson is out. So, and obviously we've seen Bailey Zappi play. And now we've seen Kenny Pickett play. Both were not planned at the start of the week. I feel like if they did that, the Falcons would just be pushing into pressure to get the rookie quarterback out there way too soon when they should just stick with the philosophy they've had to start with. And especially off a win, I don't see why they do that.
So yeah, I don't know, but again, special delivery. I don't get what Arthur Smith, who is like the son of FedEx owner. He's just a weird character, man. I don't understand his process. I don't understand his theory. He obviously doesn't like fantasy. But reality would tell you that Kyle Pitts is very talented, but he just won't use him. Or maybe it's Mariota's fault that he won't use him, but then go to Ritter. Then go to, you know, find other options. But I don't know. That team is fun, though. I'm going to keep playing Pitts. I think Pitts is a good guy.
I agree. Pitts is a great guy to just sit there and keep playing at the price that he's getting.
I kind of have to agree with you, but I'm also in the boat of I think they need to figure out what they're doing with that coaching staff or that owner. And like the fact that the owner comes out and says stupid shit like, this is not your fantasy football team. We're going to run the team. Well, guess what? The whole reason there's a bunch of statistics guys showing up in sports is because fantasy football is run correctly. And so, like, maybe you should think about deploying your team more efficiently instead of having him with some weird target share, but then only having him on the field for 60% of the snaps. So now everyone knows when he's on the field, you're throwing it to him, and you're not putting him in the best spots because you decide you want to line him up out wide and stuff. It's like you're not using him correctly for his skill set. And then you're telling the people who are giving you the numbers on why you're doing this wrong, oh, the numbers don't matter, watch football. We're watching football, you're doing it wrong. So, like, until, as far as I'm concerned, until there's a complete flip, and a complete flip does not mean going off of Mariota. Mariota hasn't played poorly this year.
Okay, I just want to point this out, just because I was curious. I looked, Mariota has history of throwing to a tight end. He had Delaney Walker, and Delaney Walker had some good years with him. So,
yeah, the problem is Kyle Pitts is not on the field 70% of the time when he should be on the field 80 to 90% of the time, like any other supreme tight end. And they're not lining him up at the tight end slot. They're putting him out wide as if he's a wide receiver. And he is not good as an outside wide receiver. He's like a third string outside wide receiver. He's like Mac Hollins for Vegas. Yeah, you line him up outside on the opposite side of a stud like Devontae Adams. They don't have that in Atlanta. He needs to be used like George Kittle or like Travis Kelce or like any actual tight end. Use him like Gronk was used for 10 years, and he will be one of the great tight ends in the league. They don't use him that way, and for some reason, the coaching staff and the owner don't listen to reason.
Even like Kyle Pitts is such a great athlete. and he's probably your best talented offensive weapon.
He is one of your most talented weapons, but
So
he's also a tight end. Like, he has a skill set that he has been trained over years in practice to do, and that is not lining up on the outside the numbers and beating smaller, quicker guys off the line. Like, he's not so fast and agile he can beat smaller, quicker guys off the line, but he's fast and agile enough he can beat linebackers and safeties.
Right, but like, even in a situation where you're trying to get him in different spots, if you want to do that, you could he's a good enough athlete where you can get him the ball in motion, and he probably would be better. Just get him the ball in some way.
And they're still not even scripting anything. Like, they're literally just like running him crap. That's why it's like, until there's a coaching flip or an owner flip, I can't trust the Falcons to do anything right, because they have efficiency. Like, they seem to be doing things right some ways. Like, I think they're using Mariota as efficiently as possible, but then they're not putting his pieces in the efficient places. So it's like, step 1, great. Step 2, nothing. Step 3, nothing. Step 4, nothing. And that's why the Atlanta is where they're at. It's like, you can't take all the steps you're trying to, like, I don't even know what they're trying to do at this point.
There's no reason why Noah Gray can get a rushing touchdown, but Kyle Pitts can't get a reception.
Exactly. There's no reason Kyle Pitts can only be on the field for 60% of the snaps when any other tight end in the league that starts is on the field for 70 plus, and the elite ones are on the field for 80 plus. It's like, it's unheard of. And like, again, there's clear numbers showing something's wrong, and whenever you bring up the numbers, they scoff and laugh at you. That's like Arthur Smith has literally said. It's like, this isn't fantasy football. This isn't fantasy football. This is literal numbers on the field. You're not using the dude correctly by football standards. Well, this isn't your fantasy football team. Well, you just let it play out. Like, now I just want the Falcons to sell. I want the guy to sell his team. Like, can something come out on him? Let him be the next owner that has to sell? Like, who wants to start digging? Someone start digging.
Talking about selling, that might be a buy and sell segment right there. We just got a phone ring. That might be Arthur Smith on the other end trying to get out. Look. Again, it's not the result that matters always. It's the utilization of the tools. Like, for example, let's say I knew how to build a birdhouse. That doesn't mean I'm like the number one contractor in the neighborhood. So just because Kyle Pitts is super athletic doesn't mean that he's like limited to only being the super athletic wide receiver type. You guys talked about it. There's a reason he's playing that position. There was a reason he was drafted, for that role. It bothers me when people don't utilize their biggest skill set, right? For example, it even this case in DraftKings and fantasy sports go, some people are good at building 150 lineups with calculators, with projections, and they don't really care to watch the games. Other people like me and you are sports fans first, potentially, and then we use these analytics and we still use the same numbers and projections, but we apply them in different ways, but at least we're utilizing some of the same skill set. To say like, oh, Kyle Pitts is only this, or he's only, like, oh, well, we don't care about fantasy. Well, okay, well, do you care about winning? Because like you said, you should get your best players involved. But it would be disingenuous to be like, oh, well, TJ Hawkinson was such a better player than Pitt because TJ had 42 points and Pitts had 3. It's opportunity cost and luck at some point too, so I just want to point that out. But it's not always to say that like it's going to work out every week. Kyle is not only 4,300 this week, but TJ is, I think, 4,900 this upcoming week. that doesn't mean that TJ is a bad play and Pitts is like a guaranteed smash. Like we're going to have to wait on the news and then evaluate based on that. And that's what any coach should be doing day after day. So I just don't understand I don't get it.
Yeah, and the thing that really hurts is Mariota doesn't have the power in the organization to really go and say anything. And obviously Ritter's not going to say anything coming in as a rookie. So there's no one in that locker room who's good enough to really come out and say something, really.
They had Matt Ryan last year, their perennial quarterback, and he couldn't say anything to make them use Pitts a different way. So, like, this is not anything that's going to change until there's a organizational flip. That's clear today.
Right.
And
just to point out, it could be any player. He broke historical records. Like, this is not a talent issue, but this is a utilization issue. The lack of touchdowns means that you did not put him in the right position. It would be like using a fork when you want to spoon something up. It's like, yes, you can use a fork like a spoon, but a spoon is better utilized in situations for eating cereal. It just is. So instead of trying to make him something or like get fancier or be different just for the sake of being different, how about you utilize your weapons for what they are? I just never understood this line of thinking. Speaking of line of thinking of, I had Donnie name us a random number here. Why don't we go through this lineup from a NFL perspective or just like what this guy did right or wrong? Because people love this segment. We got a lot of good feedback about this last week. This lineup did have Lockett. We mentioned Lockett earlier. This lineup did have that bring back.
this lineup is absolutely gorgeous.
I knew you liked
this lineup is freaking gorgeous lineup. It really is. Like
it won the same amount of money as I won in the last one too. So it was like it had a very similar structure, but you like this one a lot better. So I love that it had a similar pay structure, but you like this one different. Why? And then name some things you might dislike about it as well.
The first thing I'll say is there's heavy correlation, but it's not the standard correlation everywhere. So it helps you get different while also limiting what you actually have to guess on, because he's basically got 1, 2, 3. He's got like 3 correlated pieces and a one-off. So it's like you made 4 decisions to build this lineup. That's great. Instead of making 9 decisions. So like right off the bat, I can tell that. Like, and then just going down from it. So like his stack, he went with Russell Wilson. That was probably the best game to stack in the afternoon. Solid choice. He single stacked it with Judy, brought it back with Mac Hollins. Okay. Stack with a bring back. Solid single stack. I'm perfect with that. He then stacked the early game. That was the best game to stack that didn't have weather, the Detroit-Seattle game. I had a lot of Lockett Hawkinson or Williams Lockett or stuff like that. But because that was one of the best early games, he decided to game stack it without the quarterback. So he took 2 Detroit, 1 Seattle. No Goff, no Geno. Put that 3-man core from that game into his Russell Wilson skinny stack. Love that.
Yep.
And he didn't go 2 wide receivers and not have Goff or Geno. He made sure to grab one of the running backs. Like if he had Penny instead of Williams and decided to do 2 Seattle and a Detroit, I'd have been perfectly fine with that too. Mm-hmm. So like he's got the stack. He's got the extra stack from another game in there. Then he correlated his 3rd running back with his defense. I love that correlation. So Barkley and the Giants. The Giants were a solid defense. Barkley was going to be probably the best play from the Giants. I love that. So right there, boom, he made 3 choices. I'm going to stack the Detroit-Seattle game. I'm going to stack the Denver-Las Vegas game. I'm going to have a Barkley-Giants mini stack. And that filled up almost his entire lineup. Then all he needed was a cheap running back, one of my favorite things, and he had one of my favorite plays of the week which was to get a piece of the already highest total game, the Buffalo-Baltimore game, but don't do it through the stacks in the passing games. J.K. Dobbins was getting more snaps. He was due for a bigger game. I had plenty of Dobbins in my lineups. It probably helped me break even on the day. So, like, his one-off was an unchalky piece, 1% owned, from one of the highest scoring games. And it didn't, and because he has that, and because he didn't stack the lineup in a more normal fashion, double stack with a 1-1 bring back and stuff, he could eat Hawkinson chalk and Williams chalk, because people weren't having Hawkinson and Williams that weren't really in golf stacks or that weren't really with a bunch of other weird plays. He was able to get weird enough by just going Russell, Judy, Hollins. So, like, everything about, like, there's just enough chalk to go with just enough unowned pieces. He leveraged the right spots. The correlation is everywhere. It's just a beautiful lineup.
Yeah, and I want to point out that this player right here, Mac Hollins, he got very unlucky with this play.
Yes, he did.
I was watching most of this game. In the first quarter, Mac Hollins caught a touchdown.
That he stepped out of bounds with his heel. Yeah. That could have been, that would have like a 40-yard touchdown too. That would have been an easy 10+ points he would have had on top of everything else.
I was just going to say, it honestly was not even the crux of the argument would have been non-existent. The heel of his foot was just, hair trigger away from being a touchdown, which would have maybe flipped this whole slate, though. Maybe Derek Carr's stat gets there. Maybe this doesn't get there. But you know where he got unlucky as well, because I got unlucky, but it still worked out. Like, I just want to point out the two differences. People would tell you that Barkley was still a good play because he got 21 points. Daniel Jones left that game, but also got 2 rushing touchdowns. They had Taylor in there, so they had to switch quarterbacks. They had 2 rushing touchdowns from a quarterback, which is very rare. A lot of weird scoring, a lot of weird inefficiency in terms of having to adjust on the fly. And to still get 21 points, to still be, hit his average for fantasy points. He got very unlucky not to have not only more targets, which I do think was influenced by the, concussions of both Daniel Jones and Tyrod Taylor. But also, he didn't get any touchdowns. But then DeAndre Swift a couple weeks ago and got a touchdown when you probably should argue maybe he didn't deserve one. The Lions Williams got a touchdown. This is probably a better example this week on a 4th and goal. 4th and goal. If they don't get that stop, if Seattle gets that stop, it's a 2-possession game. The game might totally flip. Williams doesn't get there potentially. Jared Goff doesn't get there because now the whole game, is flipped. So, like, sometimes you get lucky for the good, sometimes you get unlucky for the bad, and you just got to eat both ends of it, just like you would chalk. Donnie, is there anything about this lineup from a football fan that you saw was a mistake, or that you liked, or like any takeaways from any of his players?
At first glance, I'd say Russell Wilson, but he was so low owned. I understand why he did it. I don't know what his pricing was at. Maybe it was worth it. We talked about doing a Barkley play in the lineup that we were talking about this week. I know Gov did not like that.
It was not my favorite play of the week, but that's mostly because I thought it was coming in a little too chalky, and he ended up not being as chalky as like a Hawkinson or the other Detroit players. But
overall, this lineup is pretty good. We talked about Lockett on Friday as well. This lineup overall just looked really well.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull up the first place lineup just to show you the variance. And it really is the difference between one player or the other. If Matt Collins gets a touchdown, like I mentioned before, maybe Jacobs doesn't get, 2 touchdowns and he doesn't get 37 points. So that 4% ownership doesn't look as sexy. So this guy doesn't win it. So, like, one mistake or one unfortunate thing or one fortunate thing, it all plays in. But a thing I like about this lineup that I just thought was a good process play that I'm kicking myself for not doing is the Austin Eckler thing. Because we talked about putting players in the right position, right? And you guys know when you have soreness, chiropractors would tell you that it's positioning and moving the body and being okay with what you can do, knowing your limits, stuff of this nature. We knew Justin Herbert was limited without Keenan Allen still. And we knew physically he was limited with his rib injuries, which would lead to short dump offs because we saw that later in the game with Jacksonville. Now, people, I think, underestimated it because they're like, well, they were down so much. But as that game went on, Herbert's targets, yards per target shrunk, and he was very condensed. And Eckler really got there last week late because of it. And playing a team like Houston, who is very bad at giving up points to running backs, I just think this is a bad process play by me. I should have been on this one, given especially that there was other running backs that were questionable, like McCaffrey, who actually ended up getting there. I think he scored like 22, so it's not that it was a bad play. But I would have much rather played Eckler over McCaffrey given the injury concerns. And then Jonathan Taylor, who's just too expensive. Delvin Cook's off the slate. So, like, there was only so many good running backs to pay up for. So I just want to point that out as well. Like, sometimes you might get lucky with the Jacobs. Jacobs got a touchdown because of the Hollins was ruled out of bounds. So that's a direct, like, pivot, directional thing. But Austin Eckler just made so much sense given Herbert's injury concerns. And so that's just one thing where if you give it some more thought, you probably should have done it.
No, I agree with that 100%.
Any other takeaways from a lineup perspective? I was going to pull up DK live just to make sure we didn't miss any like, not even like good or bad plays, because it's more about, like we always say, process. So I'll ask Donnie this question because I think from a real life standpoint, you might be able to give us more credence into it, Donnie, which would be interesting. So when you look at next week's slate, like, what did you learn from week 4 that you can tell me and Gov as DFS players? Like, you should look at this player, you should think about this. Like, what popped out to you?
Honestly, popping out to me, I would say, man, some of these running backs, I'm starting to learn, as Gov was trying to say, or with the Saquon thing and everything. Paying up for running back seems like not a great thing to do sometimes because
they really have to, like, they have to not
they
just
have
hit,
to pop.
They got to hit for like Jacobs level stuff, and Jacobs wasn't even a pay up running back.
Like, and then you had guys like Penny and Sanders.
Yep, and all those guys were cheap too. So, like, if you pay, like, the only guy you could have paid up for, usually there's one a week. Usually there's one pay up guy a week that hits his ceiling where you could have had him in a lineup and his points were good enough where you didn't need the Penny or the Sanders or guy. And this week that was Eckler. It wasn't like Henry was close, McCaffrey was close, but they both were just about 25 or so. So it's like, why not just have Dobbins for 2,000-3,000 less?
Right.
Like, Chubb did okay, but 23 is not going to get you there at 70 something, 7,900.
I see Leonard Fournette had 18 points. It seemed like he had such a bad game. I know he
got
one
a
touchdown.
He got a garbage touchdown. That's touchdown catch was probably 7 of his 18 points.
All right. Well,
Yeah,
I still don't see where the other 11 came from.
And then you also have to realize, like, he was not horrible, but he wasn't on the field the whole time. Like, add Rachaad White's 13 points to him and give him the 90% snap share he got the first 3 weeks. And now tell me he got 31.
They only attempted, 6 rush attempts last night or something crazy?
No, Rachaad White had a few too. You got to understand. You got to add both of them together. So, like, I think between Fournette and Rachaad White, we had, like, let me double check real quick.
I'm pulling it up right now.
No, you're right. They did only have 6 rush attempts, but then each one of them had 5+ targets. Right. So they did not have. Again, Tampa did not use the running backs a lot the last game.
Maybe that was them trying to get their offense going and clicking. I
mean, their offense wasn't horrible. Mike Evans having a great day. They don't have a great amount of receivers. They don't have after Mike Evans, if Godwin's not healthy, they don't have a great receiving core. There's no all-star tight end in Gronk or anything. Like, Lenny's not what he was a few years ago, where you can just give him the ball and let him carry. He's clearly breaking down. But that's what running backs do at year 4 or 5 or 6 in the league. So it's Tampa's probably due for a down year. Unless their wide receiver core just balls out, which maybe Julio can give them one last good year and ball out. That's sort of what they need.
You might.
They need Julio to ball out at least until Godwin can be healthy, so you have a healthy Godwin Evans.
Brady's got to get on the phone and get Gronk up back.
I was about to say, if Gronk don't walk into the facility by week 4, I was thinking week 4, so I think he should be walking into Tampa tomorrow.
Especially with Brake getting hurt. I don't know what it was exactly.
Yeah, the Brake, it's a concussion.
Okay. And the NFL is going to be real strict on that now.
Well, he got hit, clearly had came out, came back in, played one more play, then went to the bench and was just sort of shaking his head, holding his nose and eyes, and then they checked him and said, "You're not going back in." So he technically got the concussion and then clearly played another series. So yeah, they might start stepping in depending on what kind of stuff happens, but it's kind of showing that they're laxing up. I don't know if that's intentional
after the
or not.
Tua thing, though, they're saying that they're trying to look into it. So maybe that's just saying stuff to the press to get ahead of it, but I'd hope not.
Donnie, this would be a good example of what you were trying to say with Leonard Fournette. And I'll use a different position just to make the point. Trey McBride is very talented. Trey McBride is a very good receiving tight end. Some people might not even know who Trey McBride is. He plays for the Atlanta. I think of the Atlanta Braves. It's brave of him to play because he's coming off injury. Speaking of concussions, I do believe it was a concussion in the preseason, if I'm not mistaken. But he plays for the Arizona Cardinals, and he had the same amount of points exactly of Darren Waller. But price considered, he didn't snowflake Darren Waller did, because price and talent are influenced, right? And sometimes a play is going to be really good because they get lucky, or they just happen to rush the ball over a painted area and not a 5-yard rush over a first down marker. And it comes down just as simple as that sometimes. Just as simple as that. The only reason Leonard Fournette got there is that late touchdown. But somebody won money off of that. The guy from Run Pure Sports, if you guys haven't checked it out, former Roto Grinder, the name is his first name is Tyler. But he won life-changing money. And he posted a picture of his daughter and his family celebrating. Or it wasn't Tyler, it was Mike over at Run Pure. But he posted a picture with his daughter. The point is, I'm trying to make, It's like his daughter probably knows nothing of Leonard Fournette, nothing of Trey McBride, nothing of Jordan Akins. But if that was the reason he won the money, it's still the reason he won the money. She still gets to celebrate and have this great moment with her dad. And so, like, there are times where we just got to appreciate that you put bacon on the table. I didn't have to know everything my dad would do at his job. I just had to appreciate his money, the money he brought home was the reason I could eat that night. And so sometimes we just have to accept that things are going to break our way and they're not going to break our way. What's the one thing, Gov, that didn't go your way that you were 100% going to go back to in week 5 if I held your feet to the fire?
Trevor Lawrence. 100%. I know the Jacksonville didn't have a great game. I blame the weather and Philly and that whole environment. And I like the Jaguars to actually have a pretty solid game. I think they are definitely trending up. They've clearly got the running back situation figured out. Like, as long as Zay Jones can get healthy and their weapons stay healthy, like, I will go back to using Jacksonville like I did this week. Even though I use them instead of Geno when I should have played my Geno stuff. That's a process error where I should have played the Geno stuff instead of Lawrence. Doesn't mean I'm not going to play Lawrence.
Right. Now, Donnie, I wanted to mention this as well because I think you're big into stats. And I know you are. You're very wide. I believe, to Gov's point, this is the first time that a quarterback has lost 4 fumbles in a game. Trevor Lawrence lost every fumble he had, and I only think 2 of them were his fault. I think a couple of them were missed snaps, if I'm not mistaken. I did not see that whole game. I did have some interest in Jacksonville because I did bet it. They're kind of my darling team of the year. I like a lot, similar to Gov, I like a lot of what Sunshine does over there. I think they got a good thing brewing. And I think Travis Etienne, similar to Breece Hall, is going to start to integrate more and more into that offense, especially as these games tighten up and they're going to be in more pass scripts. I think we'll start to see that offense open up. But four fumbles is that's just bad luck. That's just the ball didn't bounce the right direction, in that given scenario. Donnie, is there something that happened this week that you just don't think it's going to repeat? Was there a lucky thing where you're like, oh God, fantasy people or gamblers or people that just believe in silly narratives are going to overrate this? Is there like a storyline in the mainstream media, for example, that may just be getting overblown already?
I would say Rashad Penny probably. I don't know how high many people are on him, but I don't think he's all that. I'm not a fan of him at all. He had a good game, but they probably have a better running back, at least in the future, with Walker. So I don't think he's going to get all the snaps that he got this past week in the near future.
For me, I would say it's like this Star Wars effect or like this Darth Vader effect that we want to like. It's funny to me how Green Bay and the Patriots played each other, right? And no matter how that game went, I feel like the media had their narrative already written. It was that Bill Belichick found a way to beat the former MVP. Or, hey, guys, relax. Aaron Rodgers is not like the Packers aren't that bad. And really, I think the answer from an analytical standpoint, Gov mentioned it earlier, fantasy people aren't as stupid or gamblers aren't as like degenerate as we oftentimes get seen as. We're not like itching to scratch a fiend sometimes. Sometimes we're just really processed and smart. I think there is a balance between the two. I think the Patriots aren't as good as they used to be, defense or offense. And I don't think the Packers, with Aaron Rodgers, have the chemistry they once did. I think both things are true. But the media it was going to make a darling out of one of those teams, and so they got whatever storyline they wanted. And I think in going into the week number 5, I would say the thing I realized is both teams can just be bad. Similar to the Dolphins and Cincinnati, I don't think either team is that great, and that's okay. And as fantasy people, we just have to be like, okay, well, maybe they're not what we thought they were, but they are. We're at the point, Gov, I'm basically trying to wrap up here and say that we're starting to get to this point where we got to accept teams for what they are. You know, we can't no longer say, well, this is a fun little Christmas present. This is a underrated thing. We got a lot of season left, but things are starting to take form. Would you agree with that or no?
I agree with that. Like we've about rounded the hump now, or at least the first of the year.
I did want to see something because we talked about Green Bay's running backs earlier on Friday with AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones, and I was asking about their value and which one's better to play at, considering their price difference. They both had decent games. I don't know how well it translated to DraftKings.
Let me pull that lineup up. That's a good transition. Keep going, and I'll pull that lineup.
Yeah, I still think Dillon would have been a good play. Maybe I'm wrong, and he just didn't get the points that he needed for the price he was at. I know, obviously,
I
Aaron
did play
Jones.
Dillon, and he was not bad. The only problem with Dillon this week was that all the other value around him absolutely smashed. Like, Dillon was fine, but he wasn't Penny or Sanders or Damon Pierce or Josh Jacobs or every other 5K, mid 5K running back. That's really the only problem with Dillon. Whereas Jones was like just sub the expensive guys and just sort of got there. So like I would say Dillon was a better play this week than Jones.
Yeah. Now, I want to say, because I think this is also smart, I pivoted a bit off of this lineup because we were so far down and we needed to get a bit different, and we needed something to hit that we weren't expecting to hit. And this is where we got lucky in the sense that I thought, okay, let's play Hunter Henry with a backup quarterback. Backup quarterbacks usually face or usually target tight ends. We knew Hoyer targeted tight ends in the past. And so I went with Henry here because it allowed us to get to a Marquise Brown who had seen 13 targets and was going to be super low owned because he had been injured on the injury report all of the week. So basically, it allowed us to get off of DJ Moore, who Goat also didn't like. So it allowed me to get to a cheaper, or more expensive, lower owned Marquise Brown. And all I had to do was get off of Zach Ertz, go down, and then.
Yeah, I don't know if that was actually like, what did DJ Moore actually get? Because like your swap got to 23, just about 24 points.
I think he got to 12. If I'm not. He caught a lot of passes, but they were like a bunch of 2-yard. Like I think he had like 6 catches for like 40 yards or something of that nature.
Okay, so like 11 points.
Right.
Pretty sure Ertz caught a touchdown.
He did.
Like, what did he get? If Ertz broke 12 points, it was a bad swap.
Right. Now, that's exactly what I was going to say. Like, I did it for ownership because we were going to lose anyways. And so I'm like, I want the 2% Marquise Brown in the hopes that he has a TJ Hawkinson, 40, and he only got to 20. Because I didn't think Moore could get 40, right? But I thought Marquise could, and he'd be lower owned.
And I'm not so sure about that. Like, I'd have to find a lineup that had DJ Moore. And if you can't, then you probably change from a 1% guy to a 2% guy.
Yeah.
Like I didn't think there was any reason this lineup would need to have been late swapped. It already had leverage. No one was playing those plays. Like, yes, you got to a 2% guy and a 0.2% guy. But again,
Right.
we're looking at it at the end. Like, that switch didn't gain you that much leverage because we already had a crap ton of leverage in the lineup playing a more Ertz like stack from the Arizona game.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't actually pull out that. I don't know if it actually pulled out more points or if they were basically even. I'd have to go back and look and see what Ertz got. But so like that's one thing where it's like, I don't think we needed to late swap that. I wouldn't have. I don't think there was any reason to, especially to stuff that didn't have like. I understand why you went to more. Like, I can kind of understand why you went to both those guys. Like, yes, Moore or like Brown. Sorry, Brown has a higher ceiling than DJ Moore in that offense. And Hunter Henry could have been used more by the backup quarterback if they weren't just going to run the ball.
Right.
So I can see why you played those, why you would pivot to those plays. But I didn't think you were gaining nothing other than, well, that late swap was something you could have done before lock for all the exact same reasons. For some reason, your lineup not doing well made you want to do it at late swap when it didn't give you anything extra. It wasn't more leverage. It wasn't giving you anything off the field. You already had low-owned plays that you needed to go off, and the lineup could have been saved.
Right. Well,
you just sort of switch that up a little bit to different low-owned plays for your late swap. Right. And I don't know if just getting to different if I'm late swapping, it's because I have a lineup that ended up being chalkier than normal that I need to get a little different to try to take first. And of course, that lineup had to have been doing well at the time, and then I find out it's chalky. Or I have a lineup that looks like it's doing poor, and then I swap in, or let's say I'm really at the top of a tournament and I was doing well. Then I might swap into chalk just to block people who are behind me.
Right.
Like, those are the reasons to late swap. I don't late swap I'm not one of those guys who believes in late swapping a dead lineup to different guys to try to get up into the cash. I don't it probably is plus EV to do that, but I just don't see I don't know. I don't believe it to be. It might very well be, but someone has to show me clear, solid numbers that it is, because I don't think it is.
See,
I do think late swapping can be beneficial, but I am not one of the late swappers, and I don't see a reason for it most times.
See, but that's what I love about you guys, is that you're honest and that you're transparent about it. It's not to say you're right or wrong. You just don't do it because of valid reasons. It's the validation and the value. You're saying that it might be valuable for this person, but you don't validate it for your own process, and that's fine. I purposely did that on purpose to show my worst lineup. It's not that we built it. The reason that lineup failed is not because we built it on stream or because Donnie wanted to play AJ Dillon. The process was fine.
The lineup would have worked. I'm just looking at now. You actually would have gotten 5 more points if you'd left it the same, because Ertz got to 16 with a touchdown. So the swap was actually a bad swap.
It was.
Now, in the end, but I get why you did it. I just I am not a late swapper myself.
Now, it's almost like I do some pregame before we do this sometimes. And I wanted to bring up this lineup as a difference maker. So this guy played Amari Cooper, right? Now, Amari Cooper got extremely unlucky to only have a point, not even 2 points, right? Now, Khalif Raymond also got unlucky to have a concussion and leave the game. But given their price difference, they're different plays. But that's where if you look at the end result, you're like, well, one of them snowflaked, the other one didn't. Therefore, no. The idea of the play is what matters. We told ourselves a story that A.J. Dillon and the Packers were going to be rushing the ball because they were going to blow out the Patriots in that game. Therefore, A.J. Dillon would have gotten more run. That game did not go the way we thought it would go. It did not go the way Brian Hoyer thought it would go. He got out in the first quarter, and a rookie these things happen. So just don't expect T.J. Hawkinson to put up 42 points for the remainder of the season. Just like don't expect Amari Cooper to have 2 points the rest of the season. Like that would be my biggest takeaway for the week. And we went just over an hour, so I want to give these guys a chance to hit on anything that we might have missed. Make sure we drive that nail home. We'll be back with you on Friday to give you more process-based decisions. What do you got?
Isn't it Tuesday?
I was about to say, are we going to do a show tomorrow for basketball?
You guys are real excited. I was teasing that. That was going to be the surprise at the end. Yes. So these guys mentioned it. We're going to do a special show on Tuesday. We're going to do a basketball NBA draft. We're huge basketball people. I feel like basketball goes very underutilized in the DFS community. I think a lot of people are good at it, and I don't think a lot of people what would you say, utilize it for its full advantage. And I just think basketball in general gets covered so much more in football, but I think a lot of the same principles apply to basketball. And I even think with a longer term season like basketball, where there's 82 games for every team, that there is a bigger advantage to playing basketball for the NBA than there is the NFL. Because if you take a first round guy like Christian McCaffrey and he got hurt, and that's just unlucky, that could basically determine, the luck factor if your lineup is good or not. But if Giannis misses a month and he's our first pick, he could still be great value, because the season's so long. So the games are different, but I do think that people are probably underutilizing basketball and NBA, and I do think we could see a great edge. So why don't you guys speak about how excited you are? Because I'm pretty excited to do this tomorrow.
You want to go ahead first, Gov?
Oh, I'm sorry. I honestly just had to talk to my dad real quick. I'll admit I kind of was not here for the last 45 seconds.
It's okay. Just like basketball, we all go to a zoned out space now and then to play better defense. I got you, Gov. I was asking, what excites you most about playing basketball DFS for the NBA? Because I just think there's a big advantage.
My favorite part about it is that it's an every night thing.
Yeah.
Every night there's games. So if not every night, every other night, players I have are accruing points that I can watch and play. It's not a once a week thing with football where there's the one game. Over the course of a week, any given week, there might be 3 or 4 games a day, depending on how we build the best ball team, that we'll be having players rooting on. Play.
Don't you think, to my point, though, that we could see a bigger edge? Like I said, if you have the first overall pick and you took Christian McCaffrey last year, you just got unlucky. But with more games, I think it takes away more of the variance, and maybe more skill-based drafting is going to throw through with something over the NBA, which I just think favors best ball strategy so much better in a sport like the NBA.
The NBA is a lot more it's one of the ones that projections were really based off of because of the 5-man, 10-man games. It's kind of easy to get mathematical with it. And because of that, the actual strategy for best ball is a lot tougher. because really most of the time, if you have solid projections for a player for a season, as long as he doesn't get hurt, they're pretty accurate, and you can use that as your rankings and build a solid team. Like, I think I had a team last year. If I don't get hurt by like my second round pick AD not playing pretty much all year, it almost made it to the top even without AD, one of my top picks. But it kind of needed AD to have a full season to do anything real. And that's the only thing that can really hurt you in basketball.
Yeah.
It's another thing. The variance in basketball is less than some of the other sports. So I don't know. It's just something I will be ready for this.
It's definitely a more star-driven sport. Definitely more stars than scrubs. Donnie, what is some of your more exciting elements to this style of drafting? Like, what are you looking forward to? Because I know you're a huge basketball guy. We both have the NBA League Pass. I think we're just going to be so thrilled to watch all these games every night, like Gov was saying.
Right. Like, first of all, anytime there's free time just sitting around not doing much, you can throw in a game, which is going to be nice. But with having the fantasy team to give me even more reason to watch just to get the value out of League Pass is going to be great.
Yeah, speaking of value, this is just going to be, it's almost going to be a free roll for us because I'm footing the bill. I had a good week. I want to close up shop by saying this, and these guys don't know that I'm going to say this, and so that's what makes it great because I want their honest reaction. These two gentlemen, they're the reason I was able to earn extra money this week. That kind of transparency we bring to you on the show, forget the number. It's the fact that I'm able to make these connections with people and we're able to have fun conversations that are meaningful. And so these guys really do mean something to me. So like, we're not just doing this for content. We're not just doing this because we like the NBA. We enjoy spending time together. We enjoy the process of going through and finding small edges and beating people and being competitive. And if you guys don't know, I'm disabled, so I was never able to compete in a way where it was seen as equal. Like people would always assume, oh, you're disabled. We need to even the playing field for you. We need to do this. We need to do that. In DFS, nobody knows if I'm disabled. No one knows if I have one eye, if I have 6 toes. And so like I get to compete, but through that you build like real relationships. Like me and Donnie have played video games for a while. That's just a vehicle. It allows me to meet this guy. It allowed me to become friends with him. And now like I carry that passion over. And so like whether we win or lose, obviously winning would be better than losing. But what we gain from the experience is really what I'm excited about the most going into tomorrow. It's just like the fun camaraderie we're about to embark on. And I don't think many people are covering the NBA in kind of a fun way like we're about to do. And I just think it will be a fun way, like Donnie was saying, to stay engaged throughout the entirety of a season. So as the world turns, Gov, and we've seen some seasonal changes, is there any other changes, any other topics we need to bring up tonight before we close up shop and we shelter in for tomorrow night?
No, I think we're good. I believe I'm trying to think. I think our bets for the week still have the Monday night games, so we'll leave those for either tomorrow or Friday to go over.
Right, I do.
We'll see how those end up on Friday. There's a little T. You want to figure that out? We'll talk about that on Friday.
Look at you with a teaser. Look at that professional gambling like mumbo jumbo you got there, Gov. I like you, buddy. Look, we don't know when the league's going to fill, like when the best ball league's going to fill exactly. We still have to hammer out some details. Speaking of betting, check out the Hammer Betting Network. It's a great source for any gambling or any spread. as well. But we got to hammer out a time to make this happen. But we will live stream it in some capacity. We will get some live reaction, and mainly we're just looking to have some fun and spread the wealth. So hopefully you guys enjoy this. I'm super excited about it. I think it's going to be a good time. Anything else? Nothing.
That's
Nope,
it.
I think I'm all set. I'm ready for this Monday Night Football game.
Oh wait! Hold on. Let's do a little bit of trade off. This man wants us to do a trade breakdown. I just saw the comment. I caught it right before the end. So let's give him some advice.
Sheedy and Brees Hall for JT and Elijah Moore.
I don't like that.
No,
I like CD and Brees.
Is it a PPR league? If it's not a PPR league, I actually really do like that trade.
Yeah.
Because if it's not a PPR league, you're going to get a good floor from JT. He's going to be a solid running back to play every week. And at that point, if it's non-PPR, CD and Elijah Moore might be pretty close to each other.
It's a PPR, he says.
If it's a PPR league, then I would definitely keep CD and Brees Hall because they're going to get targets.
Yeah.
Right. And JT also has all that wear and tear on his body, including last year. Brees Hall still got fresh legs.
Not only fresh legs, Donnie, he's starting to get the hands involved too.
Right.
He has seen an uptick in value and production, and now he's getting a more talented quarterback back. I would stick with that youth infusion. I would stick with the Wilson and Brees Hall connection, because actually Wilson and Moore don't correlate as well as you think. I think Wilson actually would favor a guy like Brees Hall more and more of a Christian McCaffrey type role. I just think Wilson wants to get the ball out quick, the way they want to run that offense. I just think defensive-minded head coach. I think you stick with it, and I don't think there's that big of a difference between CeeDee Lamb's upside and JT's upside, especially given the toe issue of JT and that offensive line for the Colts has really went downhill in comparison to what it was. So I would actually say CeeDee Lamb has a chance to be a top 10 wide receiver this year. I really believe that.
Not having Dak for that period is going to hurt that. Like, he'll be solid. I'm not sure I go that high on CD. Like, I still think JT is of those four, JT is the clear best fantasy play. But I don't think what you get from Elijah Moore in a PPR league with JT is better than, because CD's going to get a lot of his points by getting his 9 to 10 targets a game. Brees Hall's the iffy one because I'm completely opposite of you. All I've seen from Zach Wilson is that he's going to be more aggressive with the offense and challenge downfield. And part of what gave Brees Hall his heavy target share was Flacco game managing and checking down every game. It's also why they threw it 75% of the time. Flacco would just check it down. I think Brees Hall is probably going to get more carries going forward.
Right.
I do think he will out-snap Michael Carter at some point. So I think he has the best upside of the four guys, whereas JT has the best ceiling of the four guys. But in PPR, I will take what we can get target-wise from Brees Hall and what we will get target-wise from CD over just the non-PPR floor. Because both, again, JT is not a catch guy, so he has to have big 100-yard, multiple touchdown games on the ground. Mm-hmm. And Elijah Moore, while he is the big play guy who might end up seeing more volume from Zach Wilson, he's not going to be a 9 catch a game guy like CeeDee Lamb, where he could end up being a top receiver. So I'm on the CeeDee Lamb Brees Hall side of this. Just you should have those two guys.
Yeah,
but I'm not as against going to get JT. Like, if you could get a different PPR style running like wide receiver to go instead of Elijah Moore, I would totally do that. Like, if you could trade CD and Brees Hall for JT and London, do that. Amari, while people are down on him, go and get Amari Cooper. That. But like I would need like a number 1 possession receiver to go with JT for that. Because that's what you're giving up as a number 1 possession receiver. And I don't think JT replaces that. JT is just the stupid high-end running back, which most season-long leagues you don't need that much.
It's funny you mentioned this. This will be the last point we make. But it's funny you mentioned that because I agree with everything you just said. But the way that Breece Hall gets there is just different. Like we agree in theory of what the Jets offense will be in terms of aggressiveness. The mode of transportation is just different in the way we want Breece Hall to get there. I just think, no pun intended, but the green zone, which is the red zone essentially, the chance for Breece Hall to score more fantasy points is going to be there because Wilson is going to be more aggressive. And, or you could say, well, Flacco is going to throw in the ball more. But I just think, yes, the receptions might not be there, but he's still going to score more points, similar to Leonard Fournette. It might just be a couple luck box touchdowns, but as long as they're in the right area, that's all that really matters at the end of the day. Just give you more, but I would pass on Elijah Moore. So there it is on that. Donnie, do you have anything else you want to give our man Eli? Thanks for the comment, my man.
No, that's about it. Thanks for watching for however long you did.
And again, if anyone has some questions while we're small, I mean, this is the time where you want to get your questions in so we can help plant some trees and so more and more people will see it, just like a forest. So guys, like and subscribe, and share it with some friends, because the more people that see it, the more chances we are able to provide insight and go live for these more often. So see you guys tomorrow night at some point. We'll keep you updated. Have a good one. Like and subscribe. See you tomorrow.